Hey, you are listening to Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health.
I'm your co-host, Mark.
And this is Billy.
I'm your other co-host, Josh, not Billy. And we are joined by another Josh. He is the creator and writer behind the independent comic book, which you can support the full series of right now over on Kickstarter, Turkey Sharks from Cutthroat Comics. Please welcome Josh Nealis.
Howdy. I feel like I'm one of those things where it's like one of these things does not belong because I'm the only one that doesn't host anything. So like the odd man out here.
Well, we have one of those pretty much every episode. So welcome to Abyss Gazing. I know that you've been a guest on Victims and Villains before, back when we talked about comics, but this is since then you're now in production on the 5th and could be final issue of the superhero / fantasy / sci-fi series Turkey Sharks. Tell us a little bit about what this series is about.
Yeah, this is the finale of this run. So I do have like a one-shot planned and then a spin-off planned, and who knows, if I come up with some story, we may do like Turkey Sharks subtitle issue 1, moving down. But for now, we're closing off the series because we're at a great place to finish it. This is issue 5. Issue 1 through 5 are on Kickstarter right now. And with these comics, the best way to describe them is fun, which is good. I think a lot of comics these days are dark and gloomy and overtly violent, which is great. Don't get me wrong. I love that stuff. But I think we're cutting through and adding fun back into comics. The characters, a lot of them they're different. I do have like a dark and gloomy sense to a couple of the characters, but most of them are light and funny, a little bit gimmicky, silly. But so you get a taste of all that. There's some romance, there's, superhero fighting, there's silliness and satire and anything you would want like in a comic book, I believe is in this comic. I feel like anybody could pick it up and find something about it that they like.
Yeah.
So one of the things with comic artists I always like to ask is, what was the comic that drew your attention and got you into it?
Just into comics in general?
Yeah. And wanting to draw comics, because I know for me, I wanted to be an artist for a long time, a comic artist.
Yeah.
And it was a late 80s Mark Silvestri drawn X-Men.
Okay.
And I've talked to Drew Moss, and him was Spider-Man comics with his grandpa on their front porch back in the day. So what was it that got you into comics and wanted to draw them?
Yeah. I can't draw to save my life, unfortunately, because I would probably honestly be making money at this if I could draw. But I do really crappy storyboards, if that counts.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, every now and then somebody will ask, like, what was your very first comic book? And it's like, I hate the fact that I don't know. I don't remember. I have a guess at what it was, and it was probably like X-Men. I forget even what number it is. I still have it. Whatever it is, I still have it. But yeah, it was like X-Men and Spider-Man, of course, like more or less when that show came out. I think I was 4th grade, I believe, when the X-Men animated series came out, and they had Spider-Man, and then the Batman animated series was out. And then from there, like me and my cousin are like 3 weeks apart. So in the summers, I would go stay with my dad in Kentucky, and my grandma would give us each money, and we'd go out to my aunt's house way out in the country. And she would always stop at this one particular gas station. And I think they had like video rentals and stuff in there too. So he and I would take that money. We'd go buy candy and whatever and comic books. And that's really where it started for me. Because after that, like there was in 6th grade, there was like a young authors contest that everybody had to do. I don't know why they call it a contest. I mean, but if you have to do it. But, everybody wrote little stories, and I made a comic book. And, I put it away for a long time. Once I grew up and I noticed that girls were cute, I kind of got out of all that. But I'm not married now, but I was married. And then kind of as I got married and settled into having a house and a career, I was like, I need to do something creative again. So I started writing books and writing comics, and here we are 9 years later. And I still actually, on my wall over there, I have one of those comic books that I bought from that gas station, and it's double signed and graded. So that's one of my prized possessions, actually.
So through the comic, you did a lot of cliches and references, like it seemed like 90s and things like that. What brought that upon for this story and comic?
Honestly, I mentioned that first comic I made when I was in 6th grade. I posted it on the Cutthroat Comics Facebook, so anybody can go find it and see it. It's probably hard to read because I wrote it when I was in 6th grade, but I read through it and I was like, I haven't changed. Like, it was still like campy and satirical. Like, there's like one line about like, oh, here, like the bad guys are in a warehouse, and one of the thugs says something like, oh, here we are, cliche in a warehouse again, or something, something corny like that. Right. So I tackle all those tropes and everything. But so I do a lot like kind of how South Park does. Throughout this process, I will edit the dialogue and add in jokes all the way up until we're done, like until the Kickstarter's over. That way, when it does come out, it's like as up to date and fresh as possible.
That's fascinating. So, out of curiosity, just for myself, like this is a mostly all ages story. Like you said, like anybody can pick it up. It kind of has those elements to where there's going to be something for everyone, whether you're a sci-fi fan, whether you're a fantasy fan, whether you're just a good old-fashioned superhero fan. But the setting of this takes place in a little town called Brothel City. Where does that name come from?
I don't remember where I came up with that. And I think the joke was in one of the comments, I mentioned that the town is known for making soup. So it's not like brothel as in brothel, it's brothel as in like soup broth. But that's just, it's just one of those silly kind of puns and all that that's littered throughout all my comic books.
Now, I did see in this one, there was actually 2 things you went after that weren't comical, more. It may have been light, but like one of the characters was going through depression, I guess you could say, through the death of somebody. And another one was more like an alcoholic. I guess that was the robot, like Bender kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's the thing is, like I said, a lot like South Park does, and I'm not copying them specifically exactly, but if you watch, and I always liked this about them because, the show will be about this. But then in the beginning and all the way through the end, there's something that's like, oh, that's what they were saying. Right. So I sneak a lot of that stuff in there, specifically with like Ginger Avenger deals with. He's one of those heroes where he used to look a certain way. He became a superhero, and now he looks like he looks. And I always thought that would be weird. Like, how could you not have some kind of mental quirk where you look in the mirror and you're not yourself anymore? On top of, he does lose a loved one throughout the books, and he deals with alcoholism and depression. And then Zebo, I love that character because he talks like Jimmy Stewart or whatever that guy's name, or Leave It to Beaver, like those types of people. He's like, oh, gee willikers, fellas, and all that. Yeah. But he's just a prostitute drunk robot, and so he makes for an enabler very well, basically. So there are serious themes in the book, but I just kind of slide them in there subtly.
That's one of the best things that like I've appreciated going back and watching South Park now as an adult, where it's not just, oh, this is taboo humor. Growing up in a conservative household, and one of the things that I've appreciated is that there's like unexpected like depths to the storytelling that Matt and Trey thank you bring to these characters, especially after
almost 30 years with him. And I could definitely kind of see notes of that reflected in these issues, to where there's not this there's not a fear to really embrace these heavier themes, which really ground him, especially given the fact that this is like a very
almost fantastical, and like it hits a lot of those more like otherworldly elements. Can you talk about balancing those elements, the more grounded humanistic elements with the larger than life kind of fantastical elements?
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything. I mean, what draws you to a character is being able to see yourself in them. And even though this is wildly ridiculous at most points, you still have to be able to connect with the character regardless of how ridiculous they are. You have to understand, like, even Zebo gets married and stuff, and he has issues and people look down on him. Buddy the Squirrel, only a couple people can understand him, so he's kind of dealing with that. And Kid Friendly is very intelligent for his age, and he's surrounded by idiots. So, you know, everybody's felt like that sometimes. You're in a gas station, you're looking around, and you're like, whoa, who are these people? Like, why am I here? And the same thing with, you know, you have to build a character. It still has to be like, as silly as it can be, you still have to have something real in there for people to connect with. Stingray, for instance, who is Stinger, we call him Stinger now because I don't want to get sued by the House of Mouse. But like the very first page of the very first issue of Stingray, he's kidnapped by aliens right after his wife's funeral, and his child is left on the couch alone, and the child's like a toddler, so she dies. You know what I mean? So right from the jump, I'm, you know, hitting that like empathy button with him. And then of course throughout, he's very violent and angry, and you can tell like he's upset, he's out for revenge. And even when he gets it, and that's something I learned, you know, even getting revenge doesn't heal the wounds.
Yeah.
So you have to, you know, put the humor in there where you can, and the snarkiness and the silliness, but each character still needs to be relatable to some level.
Well, you guys are go ahead, Bill. Go ahead, Mark.
Yes, I'm Billy.
Don't.
But with comics, I kind of feel like the more popular and big name, they're kind of shoehorned into overseers telling them how to do it, how it needs to be. And with a lot of them now in the popularity of movies, they're kind of having to fit them into the audience views of how they see the comics from the movies. So you're doing indie stuff. What kind of almost the pros and cons of working with indie comics and doing it your own, doing it your way? How do you see that? How do you feel about that?
So like I mentioned, I can't remember if we were recording before I mentioned this, but I've published, you know, for a couple other creative teams, and we're getting ready to do another one. And that's something I think about because, you know, I'm editor-in-chief of this thing. So when I edit these books, I more or less give them suggestions. Like, I'm like, here's what I see, you know, maybe you could reword this or take that out or whatever. But I pretty much don't want to interfere with their story because they know better than I do what they're trying to get across. And I think it was Stan Lee who said something along the lines of, you want to make the type of art that you want to see in the world. And that's where I stand pretty heavily. And that's why I started my own publishing company instead of trying to get published by some other company. One, I knew they wouldn't care about me and didn't want me anyway. But I wanted to basically be untethered. I wanted to make the type of things that I want to make. And I don't want anybody telling me, you know, cut this scene or that, or it's like, no, this is my thing. I'm going to put it exactly how I want it. And, you know, here we are 9 years later, I'm still doing it. So I think I'm doing an all right job of that.
Well, you guys can actually see the fruits and support the fruits of those. Right now, like we had said at the beginning of the episode, Josh is running a Kickstarter on the 5th and currently final issue for the arc of Turkey Sharks. We'll provide links in the show notes below. Just kind of like a brief like recap real quick. What can people with Kickstarters, you get the goodies, you get the exclusives. So like what are some of the things that people can have as like potential perks and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there's the A cover, which is the regular cover for those who aren't familiar with super awesome comic book lingo. We've got 2 variant covers, one of which is specifically for 80s and 90s kids. Although if you're not one of those, you can grab it as well. It's the 3 Ninjas homage cover, which is one of my favorite things we've ever done.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've had that in my pocket for a couple years, and like I said, since this is the final issue, I was like, no, we're doing this on this one. Chad Shodel, who's a great artist out of Cincinnati, lended his talents to a variant cover as well, which has the first cover appearance of Bubble Bath, which is a character that's been in a couple of the books, but he's not quite shined yet. So I wanted to give him his moment before we end this. He farts bubbles, which makes him fly. And he wears a pink teddy bear outfit as well, with goggles and a snorkel, because he's got bath bombs around his belt and everything. It's silliness, but yeah, you can get all those covers. You can get all the covers from 1 through 5. They're all still available. You can get bundles. Like, I do deals on the bundles, and actually the variants are $7 now, at least for this issue. After the Kickstarter, they go up to 10. So I'm doing deals on this Kickstarter because it's important to me not to make $1 billion off of this book. I just want people to buy it. I want people to enjoy it. That's the point of art in general for me, is, you know, I'm not making it for myself to enjoy, even though I really do. I like my art more than anybody else does, but I want people to pick it up and read it and laugh and get away from their day and be a part of something positive that helps people get through life.
That's awesome. All right, we'll provide the link in the show notes below. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we get back, we are going to be jumping into the land before time of Ridley Scott, directed by Ridley Scott. We're going to be back to talk Prometheus in a few minutes. How's it going? Welcome back to Abyss Gazing. We are jumping into our Alien series once again with the quote-unquote origin story of where this all began with Prometheus. This is a divisive entry into the franchise. I might have some hot takes for this. Who knows?
You probably do.
I'm keeping it spicy this series. Wait till we get to Mystery September.
They've been kind of hit or miss for you, haven't they?
Go back and listen to it. But gentlemen, what does everyone think about Prometheus? Josh, you being our guest, hit us with your general thoughts.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I'm Team Predator. I'm gonna just put that up front. Always have been. Predator started my love for movies. I've told the story on Facebook a few times. Like, I think I was in first grade, and we must have had HBO for like free for a weekend or something. And I woke up in the middle of the night. My dad was laying on the couch, and I crawled up on top of him, and we lay there and watched the first Predator. So Predator's like where it all began with movies for me. But anyway, a couple years ago, I went back and watched all the Alien movies because I'd seen a couple of them, but not all of them. And, you know, they're fine. I like them okay. This one is fun and everything. Correct me if I'm wrong. They didn't promote this as an Alien movie, did they?
No.
Okay, yeah.
No,
it's like supposed to be like kind of a surprise, right?
Yeah, so like in retrospect, no one knew what this was. Everyone was like, "Oh, this is a grand, just Ridley Scott sci-fi film. Like, this is like him returning to his roots, so to say." And everyone essentially kind of lost their marbles when the post-credit scene happened. And they do hint at it like here and there, like the further you get to kind of explore the region of the engineers, but it wasn't until that post-credit scene that like kind of had that like split unbreakable twist to it.
Okay.
I don't know. I knew what it was going into it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I watched it with a handful of friends, and I think all of us were like, "Oh, this is an Alien movie."
Yeah, me and Billy actually went and saw it the opening weekend.
Okay.
We went to a 3D IMAX showing at a Air and Space Museum in Hampton, and it's like a 6-story IMAX. It's gigantic, and I think it was one of the biggest in Hampton Roads. and it was really cool to see. I knew what it was going into it. Maybe because I had followed the movie for a long time too. So
I know a lot of casual people had the experience that, like I was talking about, where they thought they were coming in to see not necessarily an alien film, but a Ridley Scott sci-fi film, and then they were like, oh, because a lot of the complaints that I heard or I read online were like specifically about this movie was that it was supposed to be, and it was either not marketed as an alien prequel or it was marketed as an alien prequel, but you didn't get the xenomorph until that last shot.
I don't remember the marketing, but yeah, it was supposed to be a trilogy that led up to Alien, or at least how the engineer ship ended up where it did, where they found an alien.
Okay, Josh, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm listening. I'm not like super up on alien stuff. Like I said, I've watched them all, and it's almost, for me, it's like Planet of the Apes. Like, I've watched them all. Well, okay, I haven't watched the old Planet of the Apes, but from Mark Wahlberg till now, I've seen them all, and I like them okay. It's just not like my main thing. But that being somebody who's probably an outsider to the franchise, you know, I enjoyed it. There's a lot of big names in this. Like, I love Guy Pearce. I can't think of a movie he was in that I didn't like. Same thing with Charlize Theron, and even the guy that played the Shocker in Spider-Man was in this, so it was cool to see. What was his name? He was the boyfriend of Noomi Rapace or Rapace, or however you say her name.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Tom Hardy was the guy.
Yeah, he's like Walmart brand Tom Hardy.
Nope.
Yeah.
Walmart brand Tom Hardy.
It's also got Idris Elba in it.
Yeah, that's who I was going to say.
It's got the guy who went on to become what was his name, Wong, in the Doctor Strange movies, and Michael Fassbender.
Fassbender's in it, yeah.
It is one of my biggest complaints that like, I love that actor. I think
his name's like Wong, isn't it? His last name is Wong.
I think it's BD Wong. If
I remember right, I believe he was in Sunshine with Cillian Murphy.
Benedict Wong or BD Wong. Like, when I forgot he was in this movie, and I genuinely love him as an actor. Dude always crushes every single role he's in. He's one of my favorite ongoing portions of the MCU. He's part of the reason that I have such a controversial take on She-Hulk. But I was really sad that this was like so early in his career that he has like 2 lines, and he's just kind of present. But he has like one of my favorite moments in the film where, like, right before they're getting ready to crash at the ends, and him and Elba have that like aside. I was like, it's a throwaway line, but I like their camaraderie.
Yeah, and if you like him, he has a really good role in that movie. I bet you just a minute ago, Sunshine. If you get a chance to see it,
great movie. I can't even. That's Danny Boyle, I believe, directed that. I think.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of those movies. I was like anxious watching it, like just like I haven't watched. I think I've only watched it once because I was like so like nervous watching it, and that's that movie draws you into that. Not to change the subject, but if anybody listening has not seen that,
it's a fantastic, highly underrated sci-fi.
Great.
So, but yeah, this trilogy was supposed to deal a lot with the engineers and was supposed to deal with how the aliens got created and how they got to where everything happened in Alien. And I think that's part of what threw a lot of people off, was the fact that you weren't dealing with the aliens, you were dealing with the engineers and their creations at the time.
All right, so I will answer you, and I'll pass it off to Billy, because I don't want it to just be Mark and Josh hijacking everything.
It's all good.
Again.
No, I walked into the movie known as Aliens because Mark called me and said, "Do you want to watch an Aliens movie?" Outside of that,
we
the previews didn't point to aliens to me.
see. Here is I love the fact that this is a movie that is expanding on the mythology of Alien, and that we're getting to see the engineers and kind of how everything is set up. I think this is one of the stronger entries into the series, but I think that there are elements of it that, for as well paced as it is, and this is an odd complaint to have, but it feels rushed when you're getting to the engineers, because it almost feels like we've gotten to the engineers, now we need to get to the xenomorphs, because when you talk about the Alien franchise, people are here for the xenomorphs.
And until this movie, through the other 4 entries, they were always known as the space jockey.
The engineers?
The engineer in Alien, the one that they find with the ribs bent out, that they said looked like he exploded.
Yeah.
It was only known as the space jockey. They weren't known until the engineers, until this movie. And it's because basically they use it going with the theory that aliens genetically engineered humans. And that's why they refer to them as engineers. That's the whole opening scene of the movie.
All right, so again, not to hijack, I have a question. I have a question. I just need you to like sum it down since we're short on time. But for when you look at, since we're 5 movies in at this point, hold on.
Stop breaking stuff.
Since we're 5 movies in at this point, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the only time that the actual term xenomorph is ever used is Aliens.
Correct.
Is there a reason that name never comes up again? Is it like a Hellraiser Pinhead situation where it's like not the character's name, it's kind of a derogatory term, or is there a reason that you don't hear that come up again?
You talking about in this movie?
Any Alien. Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, Prometheus. We never hear the term xenomorph again. Is there a reason for that?
They refer to him as xenomorphs in a couple episodes. In a couple of movies.
It is coined in Aliens, is what I'm saying. But I don't actually remember. Maybe those movies are just that forgettable. Billy, take it away.
I was gonna say I don't remember them saying xenomorph except aliens, but maybe I'm wrong. But I really don't remember them saying it.
Or do I just have that much? Or do I just have that much?
In 3, wasn't it like the dragon or something like that? It's one of the guys called it.
Yes, because I remember that episode being so disappointed and saying that dragons imply gold and gold implies heist movies, and we never got a heist movie. And then it turned around, Alien Resurrection ended up being a heist movie. So I hate my words.
So, but I'm with you a little bit on this, that it was rushed to me. I mean, some of the things like with the architects, when they're going through the ships and they're going through the canisters and all, and they've got the black just coming out of them and everything, I think they could have explained that more. Or the crystals, of how they made crystals and things like that, since everybody's under the assumption that they made them at this point.
So
or did I miss something?
Why am I the guy that has to explain all of this?
Because you picked the series.
You picked this series. We are only doing this series because of you. But hold on, before you explain, I want to know if Josh knows why this is.
Nope.
Okay.
Sure
Mark, school us.
Okay, so it appears they hint that it's a production facility for the black goo, which is kind of a genetic creation that they were using to wipe out humanity.
Yes.
Right.
Because they were disappointed with humanity. It was never made clear as to what they were disappointed with. It's just hinted at that those were basically warships headed to bomb the earth with that stuff and destroy the human race.
It's Chris O'Donnell. That's what they were disappointed with.
Batman and Robin.
I would argue they're probably more grumpy with bat nipples, but Chris O'Donnell is kind of the carryover between them, so maybe. All right, so if that is the ultimate thing that this black goo is like essentially a humanity annihilator, why were the engineers like worshipped in so many cultures then?
So they were seen as gods, basically, and they were cultivating humankind.
I mean, I know at one point they were calling them the creators of the humans.
Yeah.
So, but it almost feels like they didn't create us. They like cloned us from them based on the DNA thing that they did, the testing and everything.
Well, in the opening of the movie, he drinks the liquid, falls into the water, and it breaks him down, and they show all the DNA particles. So they were seeding the area of the planet with DNA to create life. That was the whole purpose of that seed.
Okay, that I missed that. I mean, I saw the scene, but I missed that, to be honest.
It's the opening scene of the movie.
No, I watched the opening scene, but I didn't catch that they were making life out of him drinking the poison.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, it was used to break him down and seed they basically seeded the water with DNA and life.
Did you watch the director's commentary, or do you just know too much about these movies?
I know way too much about this movie.
I'm like, gosh, did I miss it? Or, I mean, that wasn't clear to me. I mean, I saw the scene and everything, but I took it more as it was like showing how the poison could kill them.
Yeah,
No.
That's what I took it as too.
No, because they talk about the DNA later in the movie, that their DNA matched the DNA of the head that they brought back onto the ship.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair.
I started the movie and then I was also making breakfast for my son at the same time. So I missed that. I've seen the movie. This is like my second watch, but yeah, I didn't catch that. Now that you say that, I remember that now from watching it, whenever this came. When did this come out? 2012 or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there anything else you missed?
I mean, probably. Like,
Probably.
at this point, like I'm watching these films as our roles have switched for the series. I will be the surface winger, and you can be the analytical one that comes to the podcast with all of the information and all of the tidbits.
So the thing with Michael Fassbender's character, he's one of the androids. There's always seems to be an android,
Right,
in the movies, and he notices when you see him get some on his finger and kind of spread his finger, and there's like a glitter in it. He notices that there's a biological aspect to it. So when everybody's rushing to get out of the room to try to get back to the ship, he takes advantage to kind of pocket some of the stuff, some of the vials out of one of the containers.
Sure.
So to see what it does, he asks Shaw's boyfriend or fiance or whatever he is,
Like Hayward.
the other scientist, what would he do to find out? And he said anything. And he had some of that goo on his finger and dipped it in his champagne just before handing it to him. And you see that it starts to make him sick, and he starts having like worms in his eyes and all kinds of weird stuff. You see when they're walking through the room, you see little like worms or maggots of some sort come up out of the dirt, and that black goo is leaking everywhere. Well, the two get stuck in the tunnels during the storm, and you start seeing the little white translucent weird looking snake things come up. It's those little worms that had mutated because of that liquid. So Michael Fassbender's character gave some to the other scientist to see exactly what it did.
Didn't he give it to him because he was being a dick to him too, or something like that? I'm trying to remember.
Kind of, yeah, kind of. Because Michael Fassbender's character makes some real dickish comments back to him during that whole scene.
Yeah,
like
David.
how would you feel about finding your God and finding that he wanted you dead or something like that?
But also on that note, so like you said, like every at this point, it's kind of almost embedded into the formula of these movies that you're going to have a crew, but one of those members is going to be an alien or an android. And when you think that this is like this takes place like what, like 600 or 700 years before the events of the first film.
No, it's not that far.
This movie takes place in 2093. So look for tell me when it comes out, when the first one takes place, because I think it's like maybe 200 years, because I think the first one's 331, 33. But anyway, but you see how far in advance that android is, and how he interacts with other people and stuff like that. So I feel like David being kind of an asshole is him not really understanding humanity to the degree that we see the androids in later films, just because he still could be like a early prototype essentially.
So it looks like, let's see, where was it? Prometheus was 2093.
Mm-hmm.
Alien Covenant.
Just said that.
Alien was 2122.
Okay,
So it's only like a 30-year time span.
Okay. Well, maybe that disproves my theory, but
And what I was going to make a point of was with David the AI, didn't he go against protocol by, even though he asked him, what would you do? He still poisoned him. And they're not supposed to harm humans, correct?
You're going by Isaac Asimov's laws of robotics. And if you remember, the android and alien also did not follow those laws as well.
Yeah, true.
So they followed what was in the best interest of their programming for the company. But he was made, David was also, they talk about his programming. He's mentioned to be the closest thing to a son that Wayland would ever have. So he was programmed different to begin with.
Yeah. I could see Mark being Wayland trying to cryogenic himself to make sure he could stay alive forever.
No.
So one of the things that I want to talk about in terms of like mental health is a line that I believe it's actually David says it, but he says like big things have small beginnings, and it's kind of on the heel of this like discovery of like the xenomorphs and the engineers and their relationship. But the reason that I want to bring it up is because I think that it's one of those things that, you know, the idea of overcoming things like depression, addiction, or, you know, self-mutilation, whatever the case that you're trying to overcome, they have small beginnings. They yield big things, but they have small beginnings. And sometimes small beginnings are something as simple as make it to tomorrow. Make it to, if it's in the morning, make it to the afternoon. If it is at night, make it to morning. You know, these ideas and these concepts of having people in your corner that can constantly check on you and kind of champion that progress. You know, I think a lot of times when it comes to the ideas of quitting, you know, things like alcohol or, you know, other addictions, we think that we can't live without them. But the truth of the matter is that we can. It's just this dependent relationship. But it goes back to that idea of small things have big things have small beginnings, and really choosing to focus on the big. It's going to take time, and it's a journey.
You know what? That's not what I thought you were going to come back with for this portion of the show.
Well, that's the portion that stuck out with me, because I am also in the process right now, like just being vulnerable. I'm in the process right now of trying to give up drinking, just period, and live sober. And you know, it's really hard.
So there was a scene in the movie where Shaw and her man, the other scientist, get to
Holloway.
talking. Yeah, Holloway. get to talking about creating life, and she makes the comment that she can't create life, and that's what I thought you were going to go with, because I know people that really would kill to have their own kids, but for whatever reason, one reason or another, can't. And I figured that would be the route you were going to take on this one, was that scene and the mental health aspects of that.
I don't feel qualified to speak to that aspect because I don't really like kids. I don't want kids. My hat goes off to parents like the three of you that love your kids. I'm like really happy for you. It's just not something that's for me, and I just don't speak qualified to speak to the mental health of that.
Yeah, to kind of build on what you were saying there. So I've written 2 self-help books, one on divorce, one on cancer. And one thing I tell a lot of people is positivity is like a habit. It's not something that you just have. Like, you have to work at it every day. So I was very angry about my divorce for a long time. And then literally one day I decided that I wasn't going to be angry anymore. And you have to learn the habit of choosing to be happy. So, and it goes along with, like, we all have those days where like one thing goes wrong and then another and another, and you're just like, oh my gosh. But that's the same thing. And recently that's what I've been working on, is when those days come up, you pretty much almost say to yourself, today is not going to be a bad day. It's going to be a good day. I'm going to be happy today. And I have found that when you learn how to do that and choose that, that's where your mental health can really be improved.
That's such a great way to put it. It's something that I think I've never kind of put 2 and 2 together, but the idea of choosing happiness or choosing joy, like, you have to consciously make the decision that, despite whatever is on, whatever life throws at me today, I'm choosing to remain positive and see the joy in things, even if it's like, someone cuts me off in traffic and now I'm 5 minutes late, or like, I hope that person got where they were going.
Yeah, you feel like that's fine. It happens, and even if you have to take 10 seconds and go, it's a nice day out, or even if you like the rain, if it's raining, you're like, I like the rain, or I like the snow, I'm alive. I'm telling you right now, that's a big one. Because like I said, I wrote a self-help on cancer. Me being here is every day is not to, I don't really like the word blessing, but it's a blessing that I'm still here. So it's so easy to find things to be grateful for. And that's where happiness starts. Realize that, like, there are people that legitimately have way more struggles than even what I've been through or any of you guys have been through. And we're grateful and happy to not have to deal with that. So it really just starts, take 10 seconds and, instead of getting all angry about getting cut off or even getting a flat tire or you stub your toe, just be like, you know what? I still have my toe, Yeah.
So keeping it in the vein of science fiction and alien, terraform your mental health.
Pretty much, yeah.
Your viewpoints. All right, gents, we are coming to the end of this episode. Josh, where can people find you online and where can people support the Kickstarter?
Yeah, I mean, cutthroatcomics.com is, you can go there. Right on the homepage is a link to the Kickstarter. I mean, you can also go to kickstarter.com, type in Turkey Sharks, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I'm all over that. So, look for my smiling face or the logo. And, people are smart. They know how to find stuff.
Mark, where can people find you online?
Did you like this one?
Did I like this one? I guess me and Billy didn't share our thoughts on this. I don't hate this one. I think it's a little bit problem ridden in terms of its execution, but I like the development of the mythology. So I'm like split on this. I would give it a 3 out of 5.
Okay.
Where can people find you online?
Painting miniatures, being nerdy on Instagram, titanium juggernaut painting.
And you, Mr. Billy.
Of course, you can find me on VABoy99 on Letterboxd. I try to stay up with it more than Mark does his.
And stay up to date on all of my Letterboxd. I'm also Letterboxd is the only social media app I'm actually active on, but it's Captain Nostalgia over on Letterboxd. So follow Billy, follow me. There's Mark Moore is too much of a common name. You probably won't find him. So don't even try. He hasn't been on it in like 4 years.
I logged in and added Billy.
All right. Well, you guys can find Abyss Gazing wherever you guys get your podcasts from. And you guys can also follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We are on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you guys get your podcast from. And you can support our mental health education efforts at patreon.com/victims and villains, all of which you guys can get all of these in the show notes below or victimsandvillains.net. But until next time, remember, the longer that you gaze into the abyss, the more the abyss gazes back into you.